The following presentation is brought to you by Discovery Channel School, a leading provider of quality educational resources that help teachers bring the world to their students.
Asia and the Pacific region make up about a third of the world's total land area. Asia, the largest continent, stretches all the way from the Pacific Ocean to Europe and from the Arctic Circle to the equator. Here you'll find some of Earth's most dramatic examples of seismic activity. Volcanoes produce the islands that run from Asia's Pacific coast to the Indian Ocean, while the collision of tectonic plates raised the world's highest mountains, the mighty Himalaya. Europe and Asia occupy the same landmass, but they are considered separate continents. Asia begins at the Ural Mountains and Caspian Sea. The Caucasus Mountains and Black Sea form another boundary. Excluding Russia's Siberia, this vast area of the globe can be divided into 5 major land areas of similar features: Southwest Asia, Central Asia, East Asia, South Asia, and Southeast Asia and the Pacific. Southwest Asia includes the Middle East and its vast deserts. The oldest known civilizations were born between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers in present-day Iraq. But fertile river valleys are the exception, not the rule. In most places, the lack of rainfall makes farming impossible. Buried under the sand, though, are valuable oil reserves that have generated great wealth for the region. Although it is 60% desert, the terrain of Central Asia also includes rugged mountains and seemingly endless, treeless plains called the steppes. This region is too dry to support much plant life except short grasses, so people here graze their livestock on the steppes. Melting snow and ice from the towering peaks of the Tibetan Plateau provide the source of East Asia's most important rivers, the Wang River and the Chang River, Asia's longest waterway. The vast Gobi Desert and the Mongolian Plateau dominate continental East Asia. They stand in striking contrast to the region's highly industrialized island nation of Japan. South Asia includes the Indian Peninsula that extends into the Indian Ocean. The climate here experiences monsoons, or strong seasonal winds. Summer monsoons from the ocean bring heavy rainfall. The mountains of the Tibetan Plateau are the origin of the Indus and the Ganges rivers. South Asia's first civilizations developed in these river valleys, and today they are among the most heavily populated areas on Earth. Southeast Asia and the Pacific share the subtropical habitats around the equator that support lush rainforests. Southeast Asia includes numerous archipelagos, groups of islands that connect Asia to Australia and other Pacific island nations. Australia, a large country that is also a continent, contains a vast desert in the interior. The outback, as it's known, receives very little rain, so most of the population lives on the east coast. The country of New Zealand and the tropical island groups of Polynesia, Melanesia, and Micronesia extend far into the Pacific Ocean. Asia and the Pacific are the most densely populated parts of the world. More than 3/5 of the world's people call these regions home, even though scorching deserts, impassable mountains, and dense forests make much of the land uninhabitable. China and India each have more than 1 billion people. Most people here rely on farming for their livelihoods. South, East, and Southeast Asia all have good farmland thanks to river deposits and warm, wet climates. More than 90% of the world's rice comes from Asia. Wheat is also one of the major crops. A frozen north and a steamy south, unstable volcanoes and endless deserts, areas overcrowded and others uninhabited. In a world of extremes, Asia and the Pacific region cover them all.
The region called East Asia includes China, Mongolia, North Korea, South Korea, and Japan. East Asia is the location of the continent's longest river, the Yangtze, which flows 3,900 miles eastward through southern China to the East China Sea. The region's hot and rainy summers give rise to a great variety of temperate and tropical vegetation. Here, most people live in relatively small lowland areas near rivers. Population is dense, often exceeding 1,500 persons per square mile. In China, 90% of the population is concentrated in the eastern third of the country. In Japan, most people live in the lowlands, where the large industrialized cities are located. Japan's native religion is Shinto, which has been mixed with Buddhism, a religion also practiced in North Korea, Mongolia, and Vietnam. The religion centers on the worship of ancestors and natural spirits. Kyoto, a historic city west of Tokyo, is home to more than 1,800 Shinto temples and shrines. Gion Matsuri, one of the largest festivals in Japan, began here in 869 when a plague raged throughout the city. To try to stop the plague's destruction, a priest led a procession through Kyoto to appease the Shinto gods. The plague soon ended, and over time the event became a popular festival. During the month of July, musicians play centuries-old songs, and street fairs abound with games and parades. Some of the elaborate parade floats weigh more than 10 tons, and they're often decorated with intricate tapestries from the 15th century. The floats are pulled by festival goers dressed in yukata, lightweight summer kimonos. In Japan, as in the rest of East Asia, people enjoy celebrating the traditions of their history.
The People's Republic of China is located in East Asia and is slightly smaller than the United States. It is bordered by Russia, North Korea, Mongolia, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, Pakistan, Afghanistan, India, Nepal, Bhutan, Myanmar, Laos, Vietnam, and the Yellow, East China, and South China Seas.
People generally don't think of China as a desert country, but China's deserts are now some of the biggest in the world. Today, China's deserts cover well over 1 million square miles.
But it wasn't always this way. China's deserts are getting bigger because of desertification. Desertification is when land loses its ability to support life.
The groundwater dries up, the topsoil turns salty, and most of the plant life dies. All that's left is unusable desert. People cutting down trees and overgrazing their livestock are the main causes of desertification in China. Trees and vegetation protect the soil from erosion by wind and rain. At one time, forests covered half of China, but now, trees cover less than a tenth. With fewer trees, more topsoil gets blown or washed away, creating more desert. As the land around China's existing deserts gets turned into new desert, places like the Gobi Desert in the north of the country are expanding. Every year, over 2,000 square miles of China turns to desert. China has the largest population in the world. Its 1.3 billion people need a lot of farmland to grow enough food to feed everyone. But there's now twice as much desert land as farmland in China. The Chinese government started seriously fighting desertification in the 1970s by reclaiming the land. It's a difficult and slow process. Trees have to be planted on thousands of acres of desert. The trees grow into natural barriers that cut down the blasting winds that erode the soil. The government hopes to plant 2.8 thousand miles of trees across the northwest rim of China, forming a Great Green Wall to stop the spread of the Gobi Desert. Some people from small villages and farms are also fighting back against the desert, replanting the areas around the villages, 1 acre at a time. The problem is immense, but today, the people of China are beginning to take charge.
Japan is made up of many small islands. The country has 4 main islands: Hokkaido in the north, Honshu, Shikoku, and Kyushu in the south. All 4 islands separate the Pacific Ocean and the Sea of Japan. Korea is one of Japan's closest neighbors. From about 1200 to 1700, Japan was a feudal society. Feudalism is a system of government in which less powerful people promise loyalty to more powerful ones. Japan's emperor presided over a splendid court at Heian, but the real power lay in the hands of a supreme military commander called a shogun. To expand his control, the shogun gave large parcels of land to lesser warlords called daimyo, in return for their agreement to support the shogun with their armies in times of need. The armies were composed of great warriors called samurai. In return for their unswerving loyalty, the daimyo rewarded the samurai with gifts of land. With the aid of the samurai, the daimyo became more powerful than the shogun and were able to control Japan for more than 400 years. Samurai were known for their great skill with the sword. Their swords sliced swiftly and precisely, making the samurai a deadly opponent. The samurai's sword was said to have a personality of its own. Some were good and some bad. But whether it was good or evil, the sword had to be hard enough to hold a sharp edge and flexible enough to absorb blows without breaking. Japanese sword makers were among the first to solve this problem, creating a blade that was both sharp and resilient. And they did it more than 800 years ago. The samurai were known not only for the advanced technology of their swords, they were feared for their ability to use them. Like a chess player, the samurai always thought several moves ahead. A samurai learned many combinations of moves and trained relentlessly until his strokes became second nature and his mind, body, and sword moved as one. Razor-sharp, flexible swords weren't the samurai's only innovation. While Europeans made armor from metal, Samurai used a flexible material woven from leather, iron, bamboo, and silk. These small plates made of tough rawhide were the building blocks of the armor. The armor maker cut holes for stitching and smoothed each plate before joining them together in a flexible panel. These overlapping panels helped cushion a sword's blow. And because they were flexible, they bent with the blade's impact, which made it difficult for the opponent to do any damage. The introduction of guns and gunpowder in the mid-1500s changed the samurai's way of life forever. In the mid-1500s, a samurai warlord bought a new weapon from Portuguese traders, and the Japanese were soon making guns in large numbers. Warlords began fighting each other with armies of tens of thousands of warriors, including gunners. To protect their masters against these new weapons, the samurai built large, strong castles throughout Japan. In the early 1600s, the age of samurai warfare finally came to an end. With the help of the gun, one warlord, Tokugawa Ieyasu, defeated all his rivals. The Tokugawa shoguns brought an era of peace and stability to Japan, and the skills of the samurai were no longer needed. Though the samurai are gone, people who are interested in their legendary skills are still learning more about these warriors today.
North and South Korea are East Asian countries that occupy the Korean peninsula. They are bordered by the Sea of Japan, the Korea Strait, the Yellow Sea, China, and Russia. Together, they are about the size of Mississippi and Indiana combined. South Korean factories make computers, televisions, and cars for sale around the world. Carefully planned industrial growth and trading with other countries has helped make South Korea prosperous. But this country was not always as successful as it is today. North Korea and South Korea were separated into communist and non-communist countries after World War II. The North Korean communists wanted to take control of the whole Korean peninsula, but the South Korean government did not want to become part of a communist country. South Korea was invaded by communists from North Korea in 1950. With help from the United States, South Korea was able to stay free. The North Korean army was sent back to the north, but many of South Korea's farms, fisheries, and mines were destroyed in the war. The United States gave money to South Korea and helped rebuild the country after the war. The government used the money to build factories that could produce heavy machinery as well as cars and electronics. The goods made in South Korean factories were sold around the world, and this trade made South Korea one of the richest countries in Asia. But North Korean factories have not been as productive as those of its neighbor to the south. Today, North Koreans have a much lower standard of living than South Koreans. North Korean factories used to produce iron, steel, and chemicals for sale to other communist countries. But when the former Soviet Union and East Germany abandoned communism, North Korea's government lost these trading partners. As a result, North Korea is one of the poorest countries in the world. North Korea receives donations of food from around the world because it is so poor. These donations are extremely important because they are helping many people in this Asian country survive. North Korea and South Korea are very different countries. One is a communist government and the other is a democracy. But despite differences in their governments, people living in the North and South are still Koreans. There are people in both countries who hope that the differences between North Korea and South Korea are not great enough to keep the two countries apart forever.
The countries that make up Southeast Asia are Myanmar, Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, the Philippines, Malaysia, Indonesia, Brunei, and Singapore. The Mekong River, flowing through Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam, and the Chao Phraya River in Thailand have helped shape settlement and economic patterns. Most of Southeast Asia is rural, but its largest cities, Jakarta in Indonesia, Bangkok in Thailand, and Manila in the Philippines, are among the world's most populous. Deep in the heart of Cambodia's forest sits the ancient city of Angkor. Beginning in the 9th century, a dynasty of Khmer kings ruled from Angkor, one of the largest and most prosperous kingdoms in the history of Southeast Asia. The city was abandoned in the 15th century. Covering an area of over 125 square miles, hundreds of temples range from single brick towers to vast stone complexes adorned with magnificent sculptures. The ruins include Angkor Wat, built in the 12th century to honor the Hindu god Vishnu. The supreme masterpiece of Khmer architecture, Angkor Wat remains the largest religious structure in the world. For hundreds of years, Angkor was a lost city. In 1860, French colonialist Henri Mahaut rediscovered its temples. Archaeologists cleared thick vegetation from the monuments, but years of warfare and civil strife followed, threatening to completely destroy the city. Today, excavation and restoration continue, so that Angkor will be around for centuries as Southeast Asia's extraordinary marvel.
Vietnam is located on the eastern coastline of the Southeast Asian Peninsula and is bordered by China to the north, Laos and Cambodia to the west, and by the Gulf of Tonkin, the South China Sea, and the Gulf of Thailand.
Most of Vietnam's 81 million people live in either the Red River Delta in the north or the Mekong Delta in the south.
These two deltas are some of the most productive rice-growing areas in the entire world. Most people who live here make their living by farming. They live simply and value their traditions and culture. One of these traditions is a system of moral teachings that come from neighboring China, called Confucianism. Confucius was a Chinese sage and teacher. His teachings stress the importance of family and how family members should care for one another. The Vietnamese took the virtues of family expressed in Confucianism to heart. Traditionally, men are considered the leaders of the family. Women work alongside the men. They also raise the children and often manage the family finances. The family doesn't just mean parents and kids to Vietnamese villagers. A single house often has parents, children, grandparents, in-laws, and other relatives all under the same roof. North and South Vietnam used to be at war with one another. After 30 years of fighting, the Communist North took over the US-backed South in 1975. The country is still recovering from the long war. Poverty is a big problem, even in the cities. Families here often get split up and have to live wherever they can. Life in the city is different from life in the country in other ways too. During the war, the communist government strictly controlled the flow of information. Now, new information sources have sprung up and changed the way people think. Western beliefs, like individualism and personal expression, have become more popular in the cities, and the population is also getting a better education now. As they become more educated, people are more likely to move away from the countryside for good, in search of success in the cities. But despite these differences, family is still important to city dwellers. Many people, like this retired man, open shops out of their homes to earn money. With this money, they can help support their extended families, just like the people in villages do. So although city life and village life are getting more and more different, one thing is likely to stay the same: the Vietnamese belief in the importance of family.
Thailand is located in the center of Southeast Asia. It consists of a large northern region and a long, narrow southern region. The northern region is bordered by Myanmar to the west, Laos to the north and east, Cambodia to the southeast, and the Gulf of Thailand to the south. The southern region borders Myanmar in the north, the Andaman Sea on the west, Malaysia in the south, and the Gulf of Thailand on the east. Mountains dominate the Thai landscape in the north and west. The main feature in the east is the Korat Plateau. And in the west central area, it's the Chao Phraya River Basin. Thailand's capital, Bangkok, is located on the Chao Phraya River, about 25 miles inland from the Gulf of Thailand. Most Thai people live in small towns and villages. Nearly all of them, 95%, are Buddhist. In Bangkok alone stand more than 400 Buddhist temples. King Rama I of the Chakri dynasty made Bangkok the capital in 1782, when he built a royal palace. Surrounded by walls, the vast Grand Palace complex covers about 60 acres. Inside the palace grounds are government offices, royal residences, and a chapel devoted to the Emerald Buddha. Carved from a large block of jade rather than emerald, the statue is a focus of national religious pride. Thousands of Thai citizens and world travelers come here every year to pay their respects to Buddha.
Laos and Cambodia are neighboring countries located on the Indo-Chinese Peninsula in Southeast Asia. Cambodia is bordered by Thailand on the west and northwest, Laos on the northeast, Vietnam on the east and southeast, and the Gulf of Thailand to the southwest. Laos is bounded by China on the north, Vietnam on the northeast and east, on the west by Thailand, and on the northwest by Myanmar. The capital of Cambodia is Phnom Penh, and the capital of Laos is Vientiane. The Mekong River, the longest river in Southeast Asia, begins in the Tibetan highlands and travels through Laos to Cambodia. Cambodia is extremely rich in biodiversity, with 35% forest cover. The Tonle Sap, one of the world's richest sources of freshwater fish, countless rivers, dense tropical rainforest, and wetlands. The country is home to more than 20 endangered and rare animal species: Asian elephants, Indo-Chinese tigers, sun bears, pangolins, and snakes. But massive wildlife poaching has destroyed much of Cambodia's wildlife, and it remains a constant threat. Poachers kill or trap animals in the wild for sale to distributors and shippers. In turn, they sell the animals to restaurants and medicine shops. Asia has a long tradition of consuming animal products for health benefits. Animal parts are often used in traditional medicines. This type of animal trade is illegal. In Cambodia, wildlife conservation groups and the government are working to break up such operations and return animals to the wild. But for many people in Cambodia and Southeast Asia, poaching may be their only source of income. Conservation groups are also working to educate people about the effects of poaching on the environment and to help people find other ways to support their families. The Philippines is an archipelago or island group in Southeast Asia that encompasses 7,000 small islands. The Philippines are bounded by the South China Sea to the west, the Luzon Strait to the north, the Philippine Sea to the east, and the Sulu and Celebes Seas to the south. The islands cover 1,150 miles north to south and 700 miles east to west. The area of the Philippines is slightly larger than Arizona. Its terrain is mostly mountainous, but it has coastal plains too. Mount Apo on Mindanao Island is the country's highest point. Manila, the capital of the Philippines, is on Luzon, the largest island. The people who inhabit the Philippines, nearly 85 million, are called Filipinos. Their official languages are Filipino and English, and most of them are Roman Catholic. The islands are named after the Spanish King Philip II, who established the first permanent settlement there in 1565. Spain gave control of the Philippines to the United States in 1898 at the end of the Spanish-American War. After Japanese occupation during World War II, the Philippines gained independence in 1946. As a result of its history and location, Philippine culture blends Eastern and Western influences. The Pahiyas Festival honors San Isidro Labrador, the patron saint of farmers. The harvests are displayed in front of farmers' homes, and households try to outdo each other with their decorations and creativity. The festival began in 1595, and it remains a traditional celebration of Thanksgiving for bountiful harvests.
We are the winners!
Divided into two regions, Malaysia is located in Southeast Asia. East Malaysia and West Malaysia are separated by the South China Sea. East Malaysia shares the island of Borneo with Indonesia and Brunei. It borders the South China Sea and Brunei to the north, the Sulu Sea to the northeast, and Indonesia to the south. West Malaysia is bordered on the north by Thailand, on the south by Singapore, and to the east and west by the South China Sea. Although it makes up only 31% of the country's area, West Malaysia has more than 80% of the population. East Malaysia has a flat coastal plain, an inland hill and valley region, and plateaus, ravines, and mountain ranges. The capital, Kuala Lumpur, is located in West Malaysia. Lying close to the equator, Malaysia has a tropical, rainy climate. More than 2/3 of the land area is forest with extremely dense vegetation. An acre of forest may have as many as 100 species of trees, shrubs, and other plant life. It is hot and humid all year, and temperatures stay between 68 and 86 degrees Fahrenheit. Humidity is usually a steamy 90%. Many people in Malaysia live in rural areas. They clear small parts of the forest for farming. Subsistence agriculture is the way 20% of Malaysians make their living. Malaysia has one of the highest standards of living in Southeast Asia. The Malay are Malaysia's largest ethnic group, accounting for over half the population. Its cities are vibrant and prosperous. But like many of the world's developing nations, rural poverty is a problem in this scenic, lush country.
Australia is the world's smallest continent. The whole country is about the size of the United States, not counting Alaska and Hawaii, and it separates the Indian Ocean from the South Pacific Ocean. While the United States has 50 states, Australia only has 6, along with 2 territories: the Australian Capital Territory, New South Wales, the Northern Territory, Queensland, South Australia, Tasmania, Western Australia, and Victoria. Not surprisingly, this vast country has many different geographical features and climates. Most Australians live in the northeast part of the continent, where the weather is pleasant and mild. The state of Queensland, in northeast Australia, has some of the best grazing land on the continent. Because of its weather, Queensland is the home to many of Australia's sheep and cattle farms. Queensland is also home to the Great Barrier Reef, the largest coral reef on Earth. Many of Australia's sheep farms are also in the states of Victoria and New South Wales on the southeast corner of the continent. The area's mild climate and water from the Campaspe and Mitta-Mitta rivers have made southeastern Australia the breadbasket of this desert country. The Northern Territory lies in the middle of the Australian continent, far away from the east coast. While the northern part of the state is close to the Arafura Sea and has a tropical climate, the southern part of the state is a dry desert covered with freestanding rocks. Looking at a map, you can see that South Australia is right under the Northern Territory. Like its neighbor, the northern part of South Australia is covered by mountains and deserts. But the southeastern part of the state is different from the northern part of the state. It has a mild climate that is ideal for raising sheep, wheat, and barley. Western Australia is the largest state on the continent. Most of this state has a desert landscape just like parts of the Northern Territory and South Australia. And like its neighbors, the differences in the state's climate and geography are varied. The far northern part of the state has a tropical climate. Rain falls regularly, and the climate is ideal for animals that eat plants to survive, as well as the animals that eat them. But the Southwest has a milder climate, which makes it easier for farmers to grow crops and raise sheep. Different climates and geographic features make Australia a diverse continent. From its lush farmlands to its barren deserts, this Australia is truly a world of its own.
New Zealand is an island nation in the Pacific Ocean, located 1,000 miles southeast of Australia. It is comprised of the North Island and the South Island, as well as a number of small islands. The capital of New Zealand is Wellington, located at the southern tip of the North Island. It is the world's southernmost national capital. It is also home to New Zealand's Lake Taupo, a volcanic crater. In the Southern Alps on South Island rises Mount Cook, New Zealand's highest point. New Zealand's natural beauty includes rugged landscapes, glacial mountains, fast-flowing rivers, and deep, clear lakes. Abundant forest reserves and long, deserted beaches complete the picture. Comparable in area to Colorado, New Zealand is home to just 3.8 million people, making it one of the world's least crowded countries. New Zealanders appreciate the outdoors. Many enjoy hiking, mountaineering, rafting, and bungee jumping. The Maori were New Zealand's first settlers, arriving by way of canoe from Polynesia more than 1,000 years ago. The Maori were excellent warriors. Today, the Maori make up over 14% of the population. Dutch navigator Abel Tasman was the first European to reach New Zealand in 1642. But in 1769, Captain James Cook claimed it for Britain. New Zealand is still a member of the British Commonwealth, but it's independent when it comes to foreign policy, including international trade.
Southwest Asia includes the countries of Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq, Turkey, Cyprus, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Georgia, Syria, Lebanon, Israel, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Oman, United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Bahrain, and Kuwait. Some of the countries in Southwest Asia are also considered part of the Middle East. The region known as Central Asia extends from the Caspian Sea to the border of western China. Central Asia consists of the republics of Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, and Tajikistan. These countries, all former republics of the Soviet Union, became independent in 1991. Vast areas of Central and Southwest Asia are arid or semi-arid and receive little annual rainfall. In Central Asia, mountains block moisture-bearing winds from the sea. Across much of this region, people raise cattle, sheep, and chickens. Agriculture is an important part of the economy of Central Asia. Vegetable crops and grains are grown by farmers and sold in markets throughout the region. Most people in Southwest Asia speak Arabic, although Hebrew is the official language in Israel. In Central Asia, over 20 million people speak Uzbek, a Turkic language, in addition to Russian. Islam is the dominant religion in most countries of Central and Southwest Asia. As former republics of the Soviet Union, until recently, Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, and Tajikistan were dependent on the Soviet economy. These Central Asian countries have struggled to rebuild their own independent economy since the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991. Many Southwest Asian countries are wealthy due to large petroleum resources. Southwest Asia is the birthplace of the world's oldest civilizations. While nomadic tribes established vast empires in Central Asia. The Silk Road, an ancient trade route, brought early European explorers and settlers to this rich and diverse region.
Iran is located in Southwest Asia. It is bordered by Iraq on the west, Turkey, Armenia, and Azerbaijan on the northwest, the Caspian Sea on the north, Turkmenistan on the northeast, Afghanistan and Pakistan on the east, and the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman to the south. Iran is slightly larger than Alaska. The Zagros Mountains line the western boundary, while the Elborz Mountains follow the northern one. Until 1935, Iran was known as Persia. Today, almost 70 million people live in Iran. The capital, Tehran, is located at the foot of the Elborz Mountains, and it's home to more than 12 million people. The name Tehran comes from the old Persian words for warm place. In fact, while the Iranian capital experiences warm summers, winters are cold and snow is common. Tehran became the center of revolution in 1979. Iranians, dissatisfied by attempts to westernize their country, overthrew the monarchy and replaced it with a conservative Islamic government. The majority of Iranians, approximately 90% of the population, are Shiite Muslims who adhere to a strict form of Islam. In contrast, most Muslims around the world belong to the Sunni denomination. While Tehran experienced a decline following the revolution, today it is a bustling, crowded metropolis. More than half the country's manufactured goods are made here. Air pollution from industry and motor traffic is a growing problem. The bazaar in southern Tehran is almost a city within a city, home to mosques, banks, and shops. It is a leading center for the sale of the notable Persian rugs, and it's a living link to the country's past.
Iraq is located in southwestern Asia. It is bordered by Jordan and Syria on the west, Turkey on the north, Iran on the east, and the Persian Gulf, Kuwait, and Saudi Arabia on the south. Iraq can be divided into 4 physiographic regions: the central and southeastern alluvial plains, the northern upland, desert in the west and south, and highlands in the northeast. The deserts of western and southern Iraq cover about 40% of the country. Iraq's capital is Baghdad, located on the Tigris River in central Iraq. While Iraq has grabbed many headlines in recent years, the region has been making history since the dawn of civilization. Mesopotamia, the fertile crescent between Iraq's Tigris and Euphrates rivers, gave birth to some of the world's oldest societies, including Sumer, Babylon, and Assyria. In fact, one of the famed 7 wonders of the world, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, are believed to have been located about 30 miles south of modern-day Baghdad. Today, about 75% of the Iraqi population is Arab. Kurds, a group ethnically closer to Iranians, make up another 15 to 20%. They live mostly in the northeast region of the country. Saddam Hussein became president of Iraq in 1979 and ruled as a dictator. Under his leadership, Iraq invaded Kuwait in 1990, but was expelled by a United Nations coalition led by United States forces. At the end of the war, Iraq was ordered by the UN to destroy all weapons of mass destruction and to allow continuing weapons inspections in Iraq. Hussein's refusal to consistently comply with the UN requirements and concerns that he could launch new attacks led to his overthrow in a US-led invasion of Iraq in 2003. Coalition forces are working to help the Iraqi people form an elected government. Turkey straddles southwestern Asia and southeastern Europe. It is bordered by the Black Sea to the north, Georgia, Armenia, and Iran to the east, Iraq, Syria, and the Mediterranean Sea to the south and west, and Greece and Bulgaria to the northwest. Turkey's land area is larger than any European country and is slightly larger than Texas. The Asian part of Turkey covers 97% of the country. It is separated from the European part of Turkey by the Bosporus Strait, the Sea of Marmara, and the Dardanelles. The capital of Turkey is Ankara. Most people who live in Turkey are Muslim, and they speak Turkish, the country's official language. Located on the Bosporus Strait, Istanbul is a seaport and the largest city in Turkey. Formerly the capital of the Byzantine Empire, the Ottoman Empire, and the Republic of Turkey, Istanbul's current population is 3 million. Istanbul, the only city in the world built on 2 continents, is home to old palaces, great mosques, ancient churches, museums, and bazaars. Topkapi Palace was built in 1453 by the Sultan Mehmet the Conqueror. The compound encompasses 173 acres of gardens, courtyards, baths, fountains, offices, halls, and residential areas. In this palace, the rulers of the Ottoman Empire, called sultans, lived and governed until the 19th century. Now called the Topkapi Palace Museum, the complex houses exhibitions, the Sultan's clothing, and priceless collections of jewelry and medieval manuscripts. For centuries, the Western world has been fascinated by the marvels of the Ottoman Empire. Today, because of its unique geographic location, Turkey serves as a link between East and West, and past and present.
India lies on the massive South Asian peninsula.
It is approximately a third of the size of the United States and is bordered by Bangladesh, Bhutan, Myanmar, China, Nepal, and Pakistan, as well as the Bay of Bengal and the Arabian Sea.
India is the second most populous country in the world. Though it is hard to get an exact count, scientists estimate that more than 1 billion people live there.
Today, Indians are free to work in whatever jobs that they want, but that wasn't always possible. As late as 1949, India was made up of many tight-knit social groups called jati or castes that determined a person's occupation, friends, and even whom they could marry.
Aryan conquerors from southern Russia and Central Asia put people into castes when they conquered India in the 2nd millennium BC. They created castes to give everyone a special purpose and to create order in Indian society. There were many different castes in India. Hindu priests called Brahmins made up the highest caste.
Merchants and farmers were members of a special caste called the Vaisya, while peasants and laborers belonged to the lowest caste, the Sudra. Unlike Brahmins, Vaisyas, and Sudras, Dalits, or people without a caste, were not able to live or work in the same areas as non-Dalits. But the worst thing about being a Dalit was how others treated them. Dalits were considered untouchables because people from higher castes thought that just touching a Dalit would contaminate them. The Indian government outlawed the term untouchable and all discrimination against Dalits in 1949 in order to make India a more modern, democratic country. The Indian government has been working to stop discrimination against Dalits by sponsoring schools and providing medical care. Some Dalits have overcome oppression and now have power in Indian society. These successful people and others use their time and money to promote more schooling, healthcare, and a better life for Dalits in India. It will take time to change the way Dalits are seen in India, but as they pull together, these people who were once untouchable are improving their lives and looking toward the future.
The State of Israel is located in the Middle East along the Mediterranean Sea. It's bordered by Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, and Egypt. Although it's smaller than the state of New Jersey, Israel is home to over 6 million people. Jerusalem is the capital of Israel. It is also the spiritual home of 3 of the world's major religions: Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. Jerusalem holds enormous importance for all 3 groups, and all 3 have claimed the city as their own. Jerusalem's old city is made up of a diverse collection of people and architecture. There are Jewish, Muslim, Christian, and Armenian Orthodox sections all crammed into a single square mile. But outside the old city, Jerusalem's inhabitants live in a modern city with high-rise buildings, supermarkets, businesses, and schools. Over the past 3,000 years, Jerusalem has been conquered, destroyed, and rebuilt many times. Jerusalem got its start some 6,000 years ago when settlers proclaimed that Mount Moriah would connect them to their God. Villages and then a city slowly grew up around the mountain. In about 1000 BC, King David conquered the city and made it the capital for the tribes of Israel. He also brought the belief in a new God, Yahweh. King Solomon built a great temple on the holy mountain. 3,000 years later, the mountain is hidden under a platform made of stone, the Temple Mount. Although the temple was destroyed long ago, Jews from all over the world still gather at the remnants of the wall that supported it, the Western Wall. Also called the Wailing Wall, it's said that God's presence is particularly strong here. Countless messages and prayers to God are packed between the stones of the wall. For Baruch Kaplan, these stones lie at the center of his faith.
For me personally, I can touch my relationship with God to the extent that I can touch these stones, because these stones have been standing here listening to the prayers of mankind for thousands of years.
Directly above the Western Wall stands a magnificent Islamic shrine. The Dome of the Rock was completed in AD 691, when the Muslims ruled Jerusalem. The dome is built over the top of Mount Moriah. Islam proclaims that this was the spot where the Prophet Muhammad ascended to heaven to speak with Allah and the 10 great prophets. Shireen al-Raja is a Muslim born in Jerusalem and has been coming to the Dome of the Rock since she was young.
I like the feeling that everybody's coming here, like all the Muslims from all over. We have the same feeling, we share the same thing. I mean, everybody's praying, everybody's thinking, everybody's charging himself, everybody's cheering up. If you go around, you'll find a lot of people crying.
About 400 yards away is the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. This site is important to Christians. The church was built in 1149, and some say it is the location of Jesus' tomb. Inside the church lies the holy rock of Golgotha. Christians believe this rock is from the hill where Jesus was crucified. Bishop Nicephorus is a Greek Orthodox clergyman who has served in Jerusalem for 30 years.
By seeing these places, touching them, we strengthen our faith. With our imagination, we can feel the emotions and the feelings of the people that came before us.
With all these competing religious, cultural, and historic claims to the city, it's easy to see why so many people feel so strongly about Jerusalem, why they've been fighting for it over the centuries, and why they're still willing to fight for it today.
The Islamic Republic of Pakistan is in South Asia and is bordered by India, Iran, Afghanistan, China, and the Arabian Sea. Islamabad is the capital and Karachi is the largest city. Pakistan is the home of nearly 150 million people. 2/3 of them live in rural villages and almost half make a living as farmers. Pakistan is generally poor and underdeveloped. Repeated battles over land with its eastern neighbor India and internal conflicts have hurt Pakistan's economy. As a result, their education system has suffered too. Literacy rates in Pakistan are well below those of most other developing countries. Overall, only 43% of Pakistanis can read and write, and fewer women can read and write than men. The difference between male and female education is partly due to the culture. In some parts of Pakistan, especially in the north, many people live in tribal groups and have strict religious beliefs. There, girls are not allowed to go to school at all. Poverty also hurts the Pakistani education system. Nearly 20% of the children here have to work to help support their families. Most of them are young girls who have to work as housekeepers instead of going to school. Across the country, classrooms in public schools are run down, books and equipment are in short supply, and teachers are poorly trained. Teachers in state schools are paid up to 60 times less than those in private schools. Not surprisingly, some state teachers aren't very motivated to learn new and better ways of teaching. The children in private schools are better off. Their buildings have enough space and equipment, and the teachers are well paid and better trained.
Now, look, what is this? What is this?
But many Pakistani families can't afford these expensive private schools, and the children in poor rural schools, where most students go, are being left behind. To combat this trend, Some groups are using international aid to improve the education system. They have created teacher training centers for rural teachers to help them update their skills and educate their students better. So far, 3,000 teachers have learned new teaching methods at these centers. They'll use what they learn here on the 90,000 rural children they teach. The new training will help Pakistani children learn faster and, more importantly, develop a taste for learning. And with a better education, these children will have a better chance to succeed in the future. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia lies between the Red Sea and the Persian Gulf. The country is more than 1/5 the size of the United States, and it is bordered by Iraq, Jordan, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, and Yemen. Most of this country is a harsh desert where extreme heat during the day can turn into freezing cold at night. But each year, millions of Muslims travel to this country in order to complete a special task called the Hajj. The Hajj is a 3 to 5 day journey or pilgrimage to the city of Mecca, the holiest city in the Islamic religion. The Prophet Muhammad founded Islam in AD 622 and taught that people should visit Mecca at least once in their lives. Today, men and women from Asia, Africa, Europe, and the United States travel to Mecca each year in order to walk around an ancient symbol of their faith called the Black Stone. The first part of the Hajj begins at the Al-Haram Mosque in Mecca. Once inside, the pilgrims take time to pray before going outside to circle the Black Stone. In Islamic tradition, the stone was given to the first human being by God after the creation of the world. Muslims on the Hajj must circle the shrine where this black stone is kept 7 times. This shrine is called the Kaaba. When the pilgrims are close enough to the black stone, they can either kiss it or reach out and touch it with their fingers. After the pilgrims have had the chance to touch the black stone, they must kneel to pray in the direction of the Kaaba. Many pilgrims find time to sacrifice an animal while on the Hajj. This sacrifice helps them remember how the biblical hero Abraham made sacrifices to God for his religion. During the Hajj, pilgrims also take a traditional stand against evil by throwing stones at 3 pillars in the city of Mina. The pillars symbolize evil, and by throwing stones at them, each pilgrim is able to fight against evil in the world. The Hajj is a journey that Muslims take because of their faith. It is both a form of worship and a way to come together as members of a common religion.
The Republic of Uzbekistan is in Central Asia and borders Afghanistan, Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and Tajikistan.
Uzbekistan is a dry, landlocked country. Most of the 25 million people in Uzbekistan are Muslim, and they live in rural villages. But Uzbekistan is also the home to what used to be the 4th largest inland body of water, the Aral Sea. Although it's really a saltwater lake, the locals named it the Aral Sea because it was so big. But the Aral Sea isn't as big as it used to be. For the past 40 years, the sea has been shrinking. Uzbekistan used to be part of the former Soviet Union. In the 1950s, the Soviets started growing cotton on a large scale here. They took the water they needed to grow the cotton from the 2 main rivers that fed the Aral Sea, the Amu Darya and the Sir Darya. As less river water made its way into the sea, evaporation began to make the sea dry up. The Aral Sea is now just half its original size.
And the Amu Darya River now comes to an end, many miles short of the sea.
Many people who used to live in the seaside villages now find themselves living in scorching, sand-blasted desert towns. Some have remained in their villages and tried to continue with their lives. But many others were forced to leave the homes they had lived in for decades.
When they return to their former villages years later, all they find is desert and desolation.
To make matters worse, the fertilizers and pesticides that the Soviets used on the cotton fields have contaminated much of the region's land and water. The people here have little choice but to eat and drink from these tainted sources. Even though the Soviets left in 1991, Uzbekistan still grows cotton on the farms the Soviets set up, providing jobs to the locals who are bused to the fields. And the rivers are still diverted to irrigate the cotton crops that provide jobs for some, but poverty and illness for others. Until the rivers are no longer diverted, the people here will have to keep on struggling to survive and hope that one day the water will return.